welcome to The Marketplace, a show where we examine the mid and small cap companies, the hidden gems of the Bursa Malaysia. Today we talk to Paramount Corporation Berhad. Paramount Corporation Berhad is one of Malaysia's long-standing investment holding companies, with interests mainly in property development and education services. Under Paramount's property, the group has a diverse portfolio comprising townships, as well as residential, commercial, retail, educational, industrial, and integrated developments. It calls itself the People's Developer and has a track record of close to 4 decades of building enduring addresses in the Klang Valley, Sungai Petani, and Penang. And Jeffrey Chew, the Group Chief Executive Officer of Paramount Corporation Berhad, joins us on the show today. Jeffrey, welcome to The Marketplace.
Thank you.
Now, you have, of course, one of your pillars of your business is property. Now, recently, there was a report from Bank Negara that highlighted the overhang status of more than or close to 21,000 unsold completed units in the first half of this year. So it sounds pretty alarming, this problem. Is it as serious as it's made out to be?
Okay, let me just put in perspective. 21,000 in terms of unsold property. These are completed properties as mentioned by the valuation department. And that actually comprises of high-end properties and also the affordable ones as well. If you look at the component of the 20,000, about 41% represent more than 1 million. Okay, but even that overall on 20,000 of unsold properties, today if you look at the total market of property, there is actually 2 million of properties shortage in Malaysia, because our household number in Malaysia is about 7.4 million. And according to the NAPIT report, there's only 5.4 million properties available. So Malaysians are actually still in search for 2 million properties. So when you look at 20,000 over 2 million property shortage, it's 0.1%. Then when you look at 7.8%, 7.4 million of household in Malaysia, growing at the rate of 3% because of the household growth of family formation and so on. So a 3.1% is equivalent to 220,000 of new demand every year. So 20,000 over 200 over 1,000 is really 10% demand. And if you look at it, it will be snapped up within the next 1 to 2 months, of the year. So in a way, the 20,000 is not very much. But however, when we look at the Bank Negara report that states that there's 130,000 units unsold. But this 130,000 unit comprises of 20,000 that is unsold after completed, but there's another 110,000 roughly that are under construction. Now, it seems to be a large number, 110,000. But when you look at overall supply in the market, there's about 630,000 under construction today. So 110,000 over 630,000 is only 17%. So when you look at an inverse situation, and in the words of normal developer, what we say is that actually the take-up rate for property under construction is 83%. So 83% of the property is already taken up under construction. So the amount of even 130,000 is not really that big. Of course, it has jumped from 70 over 1,000 in the last 5 to 10 years to 130,000, but it's not gone alarming. And we also have to look behind the numbers. Why it's gone up from 70 over 1,000 in 3 or 4 years ago to today, which is 130,000. Now, during the period of 2012 to 2016, 2017 today, there are a couple of things that happened. One of the things that happened was that there is the introduction of the responsible lending guideline. There's also elimination of the DIPS, the property interest-free scheme. And in between that period, there's also the PTPTN loans, which are defaulters. The data has gone into the secrets report, which means that banks will actually retrieve those data and they will take a longer time to actually make approvals. So because of all these factors, the duration of people signing up the SPA for the property takes longer. Now, for example, in Paramount, in 2012 and 11, we used to sell 78% of our property within 6 months of the launch, right? Now, today, the last 2 years, we only managed to sell 58% after 6 months, during the 6 months period.
And you think this is down to stricter lending requirements put forth?
Definitely, partially that. And also, in the past, there was a lot of speculators in the market who will line up and queue up at the launch and buy all the properties. But today, the speculators has been weeded out. And that's also because of the good effort in terms of introduction of the lending the responsible lending guidelines, and also the elimination of the dips. So in a way, I think the market has become a little bit more sensible the last 2 to 3 years. So with that, in that perspective, I think the duration is actually longer. But for our case, because of the change of 20% less sales within the 6 months, our actually unsold unit has actually moved from 22 units or 22% to 42%. When you look at percentage, it's actually very, very tricky, because 22 to 42 is really nearly 100% increase. So, but to us, after the 6 months, the property are all sold anyway, and we have very few unsold stock upon completion. And most of the properties, when I talk about under construction, 634 units under construction, those takes 3 to 4 years to complete. So only 1/3 or 1/4 of it gets completed every year. So when you match the demand and supply of 220,000 of new household being created every year against 210,000 of a new supply coming uncompleted, it's actually quite matched, and it's a little bit shortish as well.
Do you think the report by Bank Negara does not do the real whole situation justice?
No, I think the issue was that people misread the report. The report is actually very comprehensive, very good for developers, even like us, to study the market and see the breakdown within uncompleted and also the completed, and also the completed, uncompleted portion, how much of it versus the total in supply. So it shows actually 83% take-up rate of property under construction, which is actually surprisingly very strong, even in the market today.
Yes.
When you talk about the situation.
Yes, nevertheless, the Bank Negara also put forth a few concerns regarding the market, something that was responded to by the government by putting a moratorium or freeze on projects or developments worth more than 1 million ringgit. So that's one of the key questions put forth by the Bank Negara report. They say that houses are being built, but not in price brackets that people can actually afford.
Actually, that's very correct. I think that's exactly spot on when you look at 210 and 211, where a lot of developers have been building properties that are 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. And the properties that are 400,000, 500,000 was completely neglected. And that's where the real demand is. That's where the population of 32 million and 7.4 million household needs those property of 300,000, 400,000. But the good news is that,
why do you think that is? I know you cannot speak for the whole industry, but you are someone very experienced with a strong footing in the property market. The neglection of the 200,000 ringgit to 500,000 ringgit price bracket, why did that even happen in the first place?
Okay, I think when the developers were looking at GNP per capita, when the government says that we want to increase our GNP per capita from, at that point, about 6,000 to 15,000 US dollars per year, a lot of developers thought that GNP capital is the average, is the mean. But in fact, GNP capital is an average. So the T20 has actually a lot more income. But the M40 and the B40, those people can afford smaller properties. So I think developers read it that GNP capital represent the income mean, which is today is about 6,000. So in a way, it's a mismatch of understanding the data. Today, a lot of developers, the last 2 years, have actually made a complete U-turn. And all of us are doing 300,000, 500,000 properties. And for us in Paramount, 90% of our projects are below 1 million. And usually the range is about 300,000 to 600,000. And I think I've seen a lot of launch in the newspaper and so on, 300,000, 400,000 properties. And it gets snapped up within 2 days or 3 days, And that's where the demand is. You know?
We'll take a short break. We'll come back with Jeffrey Chew, Group CEO of Paramount Corporation Berhad. The Marketplace will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Marketplace with me, Lukman Haris. I've been speaking to Jeffrey Chew, Group Chief Executive Officer of Paramount Corporation Berhad. Now, we've been focusing a lot on one half of your main pillar, which is property, through Paramount Property now before the break. And you said a lot of the property players have misperceived the market conditions and building expensive homes. Well, that's in the past, fine. But from now onwards, going forward, are they rectifying the mistake?
Absolutely. The last 1 year, 1.5 years, you see a lot of projects that have been launched at 400,000, 500,000. And developers has also taken the initiative to actually find ways to make the development more effective and more efficient. For example, we used to build the car park in the basement, which is very expensive. So a lot of developers have taken up the car park basement to either above the ground or an annex building, which helped to save quite a lot of development costs. And of course, a lot of other things they've done is that look at what through value engineering, what is really a value to the consumer, rather than just building everything which is expensive, but not really any value. So in that sense, I think the developer has taken the initiative over the last 2 years to actually reduce costs by at least 5 to 10% in terms of construction price and pass these savings back to the buyers.
I am intrigued by what you were saying earlier, that some lending requirements, for example, the failure to pay the PTPTN loans, factored into the CCRIS, which is then subsequently, the information is passed on to the banks, causing for home loans to be delayed or home loan approvals to be delayed. Do you think this shouldn't be the case? Do you think in terms of lending regulations, especially for first-time home buyers, should it be stricter or should it be looser?
I think it's a very good effort to put the data in the CCRIS, and I used to be the CEO of the bank, so I understand that the bankers will be a little bit more careful when you have 1, 2 months or 3 months that are payments that are not paid. But however, I think exceptions have to be made because PTPN loans are slightly different from default on a loan for a property or a default on a loan on a business. So I expect, and I was quite encouraged that some of the banks actually look at the default in the PTN as a little bit a different sets of default.
Finally, let's end with this. We have about 30 seconds left. I'm intrigued by what you said about how the T20 buy houses and then renting them out. Do you think it's fair that those with money who can afford to buy properties, do buy them and renting them out or reselling them at a profit, thereby generally pushing up the prices within the market and make those who do not have the capacity, make it harder for them to buy homes when they really need homes that they want to live in and not just use as an investment tool?
I think we cannot dictate the market force. We should allow the market force to dictate the policies. But I think what's important is that the government can actually assist those who cannot afford to actually buy so that they don't miss out in terms of the inflation. So in a way, things like what the banks are doing in terms of rent and buy is a very good initiative. Government helping the buyers to buy properties, and that's also a very good, coming back with dips for first-time buyer may be one of the ways to help people who cannot have the initial outlay investment to pay for the property, but as long as they can afford to pay after the installment starts.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Jeffrey Chew, Group Chief Executive Officer of Paramount Corporation Berhad. And that wraps up this episode of The Marketplace. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and all our social media platforms at 50101, Instagram as well. Download our app, as you can see there, available on Google Play, and also the Apple App Store. I'm Lukman Haris. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.